Next week is going to be my last week of work before I head to France to see my family for Christmas. The stage we're at with Wizards is I am dancing around a very fat and vague boundary I've called content complete. My concept of that is that all the stuff is there and you could theoretically play it all the way through. Have I played it all the way through? No, I haven't. And I don't plan to, because if I do that, I'll find loads of stuff that's wrong and then I won't be content complete. But then even then, the definition of like what is content and what is complete, both those words have lost all meaning to me now. Because there's a lot of stuff I want to be in there that isn't in there yet. But it's optional, it's stuff that it's not part of the critical path. It's some extra stuff. Some of it is sort of, even that is a whole spectrum. There's some stuff that's absolutely the critical path, and there's some stuff that's completely divorced from the critical path, nothing to do with it, no story, random, with these dream missions we have. And there's actually something in between that's like, it's a dream, but it is plot related and there is dialogue in it. And those are all done. But there's stuff surrounding those that's like, is that part of content complete? It kind of ought to be, but you bargain with yourself and you try and make the deadline, that when you're really far from content complete, it's like, well, of course that's not part of content complete. Like none of that stuff is. Like, this is the content complete. And then as you get closer to it, it's like, oh, this stuff ought to be in there really. But it's still quite a fun time because my first task this week was to draw up just a list of here's everything that's left to do in the game, and here is the stuff that must be done. Here's the stuff that's high priority, here's the stuff that's low priority. And the size of that list tells me that the low priority stuff ain't getting done. The highs, some of them are very high. There's just stuff about like the feel of it, the presentation, just things that like this has been janky or rough or nasty for like 3 years. I just want to make it good. I know how to make it good, and it won't take that long. It'll take like days, maybe a week, not 2 weeks. And that seems like such an achievable amount of time. But then when you're this deep into a project, you do have to get pretty strict about what you let yourself spend time on. I still don't, when I look back on this game, I don't think we wasted a lot of time. It's just that we keep making a different kind of game than we've made before, and each kind of game has its own size that you don't know about till you start making one, and you don't even know when you start making it. You don't know till you're finished. And yeah, I've already done at least one video about why this game's taking a long time. I'll do at least one more once we're done. I won't get into it in a big way here. But I want to talk about some stuff I've been working on. I'm very excited today. It's Friday and I finished work and I've got this urge of like, damn, I actually kind of want to go back to it because I just hit on a really nice discovery as the last thing I did today, which is one of the things that's been rough and janky and annoying me for years is the sound that words make when they spell out. This project has completely turned me into an evangelist for text should spell out word by word, not letter by letter, and not all at once, and not like some games even do like a continuous thing where it's going to fade in, so it's kind of completely dreamy. We don't speak in letters. We don't speak instantly. We speak in words. Like the way my brain at least processes somebody talking is you hear one word at a time and you piece it together into sentences, and the rhythm of that, like it's just night and day. If you like text letters popping in doesn't match the rhythm of human speech. It appearing all at once obviously has no rhythm at all. Word by word, that's human speech, especially if you pause on the commas and you pause longer on the full stops and all that stuff. That rhythm, when I put that in the game, like it would have been literally 5 years ago. When I put that in the game, it was like magical, and I was so happy with that. I was like, oh my god, the dialogue just went from like a wall of text to like, this feels like speech, this is like something being said. And I was so happy with it that I was fine with the typewriter clack that was making this noise, because it has a typewriter font. The idea is like Jen, the freelance witch, she's a PI, and the sort of typewriter font and the typewriter sound was part of her vibe. It was like shit, kind of, as we were coming up with looks for like the UI and various kind of trappings around the game. I didn't want to go super like Tom Clancy night vision goggles kind of stuff. Like that is part of the vibe of the game, but futuristic UI is just, it doesn't stand out. It isn't distinctive because that's kind of what 90% of games have anyway, and it's what sci-fi games have, and it's just like it can be bland really easily. And so we settled on like dossiers as kind of like a motif for UI and just a presentation as a thing that feels serious and sort of military adjacent, capturing the thing we're kind of parodying, without it being completely bland and rubbish. But I just picked like a typewriter, the sound of one typewriter key being pressed, and that same sound, not variants on the sound, but that same sound repeats for every single word that's spelled out, and that was fine for about a year. And then for the last 4 years, it has been grating at me more and more that every single word is just clack, 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 clack. And actually, as I've developed the system and like tweaked it and made it, tuned it to my tastes, actually having the word spelled out really fast is kind of my preference. It used to be that they spelled out kind of slowly, but then the conversation auto-progressed, and now I've switched to like it spells out really fast, but nothing, the next line, the next speech bubble doesn't pop up till you manually progress it. So today I finally, this was on my high priority list, and I just, as a treat to myself, I moved it to the necessary list. Like, no, I have to do this. I can't. We're not shipping the game with that one typewriter clack being what you hear for every word of quite a writing-heavy game for 10 hours. Like, I can't do that. I have to at least spend some time to try and find a better sound effect, or like different sound effects, or see. The question I was answering is like, should it be a variety of different sound effects that it cycles through per word as one person speaks, or should it be that each character has just like one sound effect that is their one, and then each character sounds different? And that is the answer. I haven't finalized this, but the sort of like eureka moment, I went out and actually finally bought some sound effect, some specifically user interface sound effect libraries, because that's part of my sound effects like repertoire that's always been a bit lacking. I've just kind of improvised and just found little bits. A lot of my UI sound effects are not UI sound effects, they're Foley or something. And it's a bit of a mishmash. It's a place where I'm not consistent and where consistency is kind of valuable. So I went out and bought one, and then found this library called DevTones, which has a lot of stuff in it. I've been using their free sample for a couple of things, and I finally bought their full pack, and it's got something like 35 different click sounds, and I listen to them. So many of them are so good. I'm like, yes, this is what I want. I've always been like desperately seeking. My eternal problem with sound effects is like everything is too big, it's too loud, it's too grating, it's too long, like crazy long. You'll go for something that's like, UI select sound, and it's 7 seconds long. You're like, what world are you living in where you select something and a sound effect 7 seconds long plays? Like, everything needs to be so fucking subtle, so short, so light, so just tick, tick, tick. Like, that is my UI preference. And found this great library, bought it, listened to these, was delighted with them, tried them all, and I created a system where the first thing I tried, instead of the typewriter clack, I didn't know this was going to be a video about this sound effect specifically, but it is now because it's too big of a topic to skip over. This is huge. The first thing I thought might be a good replacement, because I thought about this before, is like maybe if the dossier motif comes from Jen, maybe that's her sound, and then Zan has like just a modern keyboard sound. Doesn't quite work because he's older than her and he wouldn't be like more modern in general, but we could just try something like that. And so the first thing I did was I actually took, if you play Gunpoint, when you hack a laptop, there is a little like noise, and the typing sound from that is, I think I actually have that sound effect in Wizard somewhere, or an abbreviated version of it. But I opened that up and I just pulled out a couple of keystrokes from that, just like, let's have just one of those. In fact, I pulled out like 5, I think. And I dumped them in. I wrote a system where the first thing I tried is like the word by word thing. So every word is going to randomize what sound effect it plays. And I took all the typing sound effects all the keystrokes individually, pulled them out, put them in an array, had it randomly choose those, and it sounds exactly like typing, which is a nice effect, and it's definitely more pleasant than the typewriter clack. But it's so like typing. It's uncannily like typing, that it feels weird that it's coming out of people's mouths. Like, you're seeing it in a speech bubble. The presentation of the game, if you haven't seen it, is that there are comic book style speech bubbles coming out of people, and then that spells out. And there isn't a typing metaphor. They're not typing this stuff. They are saying it out loud in the fiction of the game. Unlike Gunpoint, where they actually were typing to you. And so the fact that it was so uncannily typing was kind of a bad thing. It was like too convincing. So then what I tried was like, what if we keep that same array and we just uh, every time a speech bubble is born, every time one is created, it randomly picks one of those sound effects, and every word in that speech bubble will use that one. That's obviously not something I would ever use for the final game. It shouldn't be random, but just for the sake of testing these, that's an easy thing to hook up. And so then I just went through reams of dialogue where every speech bubble would randomly select a sound effect and use that as if it was the sound effect for writing in this game. And I had these 5 keystrokes from the hacking sound in Gunpoint, and then I had I think about 13 different click sounds in this new library I just bought. And I went through, and every time speech bubble came up, I kind of thought, okay, this is this one's a bit too harsh, or this one's too quiet. This one's made little notes on them as if I was like reviewing submissions. I've done this before for reviewing like sample tracks for composer jobs, and I was doing this for sounds that are like 0.3 seconds long. I'm like, oh, this one has a kind of squelchy feel to it. And slowly kind of refining down, like, oh, no, definitely not this, maybe this, maybe that, oh, this one's great, and then changing my mind a lot, like, this one I thought was great before, no, now I hear it in context with all the others, it's actually kind of rough compared to theirs. Slowly weed them out, and ultimately, it's like, when I got to like the last sort of 7, I started these 5 keystrokes and 13 click samples from a professional library. I ended up with 5 keystrokes and 2 from the professional library, and then I was like, I don't think I like those 2, so it's just the 5 keystrokes. They are surprisingly good. And then I thought, okay, well that's good, but I need more. And to be honest, that old sample is not the best quality, so I went looking for other samples of just people typing. There's a wide variety of those, and I just found a really nice, clean, long one on Freesound. That is kind of it sounds to me like a laptop keyboard, like not a super clacky one, because again, you want the sound effect to be like, I mean, UI sounds in general, I want to be very light and short and low gratingness. Gratingness is the big thing. It's just like anything that's abrasive just gets unpleasant so fast. So I like everything to be like nice and clean and short and smooth. And yeah, laptop keyboard, good for that. And then I discovered this amazing thing, which is that I kind of discovered it during that whittling process where I ended up with 5 keystrokes from the original thing. And one of those is not very good, and I've trimmed it now. But those 5 keystrokes, they're all from this original recording that was one person typing on one keyboard. They all have very different characters to them. There's one that, as I was playing through, every now and then the sound effect randomly picked and the person speaking lined up so perfectly. Like, oh, Rion should have this sharp noise. And Dahl has like, there's one that I thought was like the most standard, kind of straightforward, obvious choice for it, just a basic keystroke. And then as I listened to all the others, a lot of the others are lighter or weirder and squelchier or I don't know, all these other properties. And then the old one actually kind of sounds kind of low and flat and direct and bassy compared to the others. And I realized, oh, this is Dahl's sound effect. This is what she sounds like. She's just like, she's very direct. She just tells you what she thinks of you and doesn't take any shit, and all these little personalities start coming out of it. And this is just within one sample of like the same keyboard being pressed. It might even be the same keys in some of these cases, but yeah, the sound of someone typing, every keystroke has a unique character to it. And I got this better quality sample, and I've been pulling out little things from that. And I've only just at the early stages of testing those. I haven't assigned them to characters or anything. I don't actually have the technology to do that yet. But I'm very excited about how it sounds because it's so much just smoother and nicer and gentler and less abrasive on the ears, and then the character of them is already quite distinctive. And I think with this new sample, and when I finally, I've pulled out 5 keystrokes from this. This is like a 2-minute track of somebody typing. There are thousands of keystrokes, and so I'm just going to keep pulling them out until I've got 20 or so, and then just really have an embarrassment of riches for picking different personalities out of these keystrokes. And it's all the same thing. I didn't think this would happen because I thought either it would be so hard to find any sound that sounds good when you repeat it that fast. It spells out super fast, so it's just like this same sound over and over again. Might be so hard to find a good one that I don't get a choice. It's just there's only one that I like, and I would just have everyone sound the same. Or if I was going to have people vary and have different speech sound effects, I thought they would need to be fundamentally different. That's what I was thinking, like typewriter for one, laptop keyboard for another, and then I'm like, there's like 12 speaking characters in this game, probably, maybe more. How the fuck am I going to get 12 fundamentally different things that feel right? And so this is just a gift. It is, they're all consistent, they all sound of a piece with each other, but they also have their own character to them. I'm very excited about how it's going to work out. Yeah. So that's the exciting life of someone coming towards the end of a very long project, getting wildly excited about the sound of someone typing on a laptop. That's one of the things I've been doing this week. Another thing, something that I've been looking at, and this is kind of part and parcel of that, is all these things, ways of like framing things differently that turn them from a chore into a pleasure. This is all untested, to take it with a pinch of salt, but I have this theory that we've been trying to get people to read the details on the map items. So a map item, there's a kind of conspiracy board mode to this game where every now and then you look at a map and there are all these pictures pinned to it, and you connect them with red string like a conspiracy board. It's a combination conspiracy board and map. It just makes sense that some of these things take place in particular locations or come from particular places. We also want you to have a sense of the geography. You want to feel like you're traveling across a world. So they are one and the same thing. And each new thing we drop on that map has some details you can read about it. And we're asking you to connect them up in a particular way. It's not a free-form thing. We're not trying to... it's not a place where you actually solve the mystery dynamically. That would be kind of beyond the scope of this game. It's not a mystery solving game primarily. What it's there for is to check you understood the key parts of the plot, and if you didn't, tell you what you need to know so that you do. Because the thing I always have with games, trying to go too deep on this, but the problem I see again and again with games is someone who I've got very little patience. I'm quite high standards for writing, and if you lose me, you've lost me forever. And so what often happens in games is I'm watching the intro cutscene. I'll give it the best will in the world. I'll come at it. I'll try and meet it halfway. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to be patient. But it's been 6 minutes. And I just want to play the fucking, because I don't know if I like the game yet. So I don't want to invest 15 minutes in watching a cutscene and then just find out in the first 2 minutes playing oh, this fucking sucks. It's not for me. So there are so many games that ask too much of you in terms of listening, in terms of paying attention to the plot before they've earned it, before they've given you any confidence that you actually like the game and care about it enough. And so what often happens is I start skipping those cutscenes, and then oh shit, I actually really like this game. And just through attrition, past a certain point, I've been with these characters enough. Something's happened that warmed me to them or something, and now I'm you know what? I do want to know a bit more about the plot. But I missed the first 7 cutscenes because I was bored back then and I just wanted to get to the fucking game. And now I don't know what the fuck's going on and I never can. So if you lose me, you've lost me forever. And so I'm trying to combat that. And one of my methods is, my policy is always firstly, try and write better and have stuff that people actually do want to read, but then also never assume they want to read it. Always still frame it as if this might be garbage, this might be boring to you. You might want to skip it. And if you do, I don't want you to be completely left behind if you later think, actually, I do kind of want to know what's going on now. So the map mode is just this thing that pops up every now and then, and you just need to spell out the basics of it. And if you don't know the basics, then these map items, you can click on them and read the text about them, or you can just ask for hints and we'll just tell you. And we're probably going to add a button that just solves it for you, where not only do you get a hint, but they actually make the connection for you, and then it's just a passive thing. The reason it's not a passive thing by default is that if you do it yourself, you'll remember it. So ideally, that would be nice. So there's these details on these items. You don't have to read them, but it's worth at least looking at them. You just click on the item, it zooms in, you see the details. You don't have to read the whole thing, but you just kind of, there's some stuff there that it's worth knowing that it's there. And so... And it would be hard to keep track for the player of which things they've read and which ones they haven't. Even if, it's a difficult thing to do. So we put little gold star, I think, on each item that you haven't read. It's very hard to make that visible because the map you can zoom out as far as you like, and then we try making them jiggle a little bit so they catch the eye. Motion is always the best eye-catching thing, and now it's starting to feel to me like we're kind of nagging you to do something, and it's not 100% effective. It's still not noticeable enough, and it's not clear enough what that's saying to you. And then also, it feels like nagging. And my idea, I haven't tested this yet, but my idea is, what if before you've read a map item, before you've clicked on it at all, if it's just like in an envelope, it's like a package, and then you just click on it once and the package just goes, it just rips open, you see what it is, you're zoomed in, you're potentially reading the details if you want to read the details, but you've seen that they're there, and then you zoom back out and you get on with connecting things up. And that way each one's like a little gift or a little mystery, like what's this? Ooh, open it up, find out. As opposed to all this text is already there and then it just jiggles at you and says, read me, read me, read me, read me. Like it's the same system. In fact, the new system would be like a little bit more heavy-handed in theory, of like we're forcing you to click on the thing. But then like you're going to want to click on the thing. Like, to not click on the thing is to completely not engage with the thing. Again, we'll probably have a way to skip it, but it's interesting how sometimes just reframing it in a way that's more heavy-handed, I think, is going to make this feel like a pleasure rather than a chore, rather than us nagging you to do something you could already do. If you couldn't do it at first, and then a single click like reveals something and unwraps something and then shows it to you, you're not forced to do anything, you don't have to read it, you can just zoom straight back out. I think that's going to feel nice. And so a lot of the stuff I've been doing is reframing things. There's one more example I want to talk about that's kind of, I think it's related, where it's certainly an example of reframing, where another kind of pass I'm doing at this late stage is going back and, as much as possible, try to make the game one where all the information is in the UI, it's there for you to find it, you know where to find it, so you can snoop at your leisure, rather than a game that's full of obtuse icons and stuff that's hard to understand, with a big tutorial at the start that explains in big walls of text what you have to do, and or a tutorial that jumps up and stops you, and instead of playing, you've got to stop and read this thing before you can progress, and there's an OK button, but like if I click that without reading it, can I ever get this back? That kind of stuff. So we did a pretty good job of that for like 99% of it. You don't need anything like that, but there are some things where, okay, there's mechanic, the information is there, you can get the information as a way to summon it, but people are getting confused by this and they're not summoning the information. So there's just some cases where we do just need to pop up a text box and just say, here's what's going on here. The reason you just got shot in cover is because this guy has an ability that shoots you through cover. That information is in the UI if you know where to look, and we try and make it as intuitive as possible to know where to look, but we can't do a perfect job, so this is important enough that we're just going to tell you. So I had a lot of opinions on these, by the way. This is a job I gave to our programmer John Winder, and I had this very specific brief on like this box that pops up, it doesn't interrupt gameplay, it doesn't pause the game, you can still play the game, all the other buttons still work around it. Obviously it's a bit annoying if you don't get rid of it, but we don't interrupt you, it's just there, it's telling you something important, so it's big, but it's not stopping you from playing. And then not only does it have a very big OK button or got it button, but the entire text box actually is the hotspot for that button. So you don't even have to click on the button, just anywhere, as soon as you move the cursor anywhere in the box, it's immediately clear, I can just click to get rid of this. It's out of your way so fast, so easy. And then of course the reason people don't do that is that, oh, what if the player accidentally clicks on it too soon, or just as it comes up they're already clicking, so now it's gone and they can't get it back. And so they do things like completely freeze up your screen. They don't give you an OK button, they make you wait like 3 seconds before that pops up. Then when you press the OK button, you've got to hold it down for 2 seconds, and it's just like so much friction, just wading through treacle to get back to the fucking game if you already know this information. And I think there's a real simple solution to that, which is just make it real easy to dismiss, and when it's dismissed, it just minimizes. It just goes down to the bottom, and you know it's there. And you can click it again to get it back. If you didn't mean to dismiss it, you just saw where it went. Like, again, motion is really super important. It can't just jump to a minimized state. You have to see it transition so you know where it is, and you can bring it back at any time. That's not even the thing I'm supposed to be talking about. One of those is one of the things that people needed help understanding. Again, the information is there if you know where to look, but you might not know to look for it. Is there's a time when you start with only 2 wizards, you eventually get more. Haven't decided exactly how much we'll say about how many wizards you get. And some of them you'll meet in dialogue scenes, some of them you meet in gameplay, that they're in the level. And One of which is a character who is she's a resistance fighter who is wearing the armor of her enemy and sort of using it against them. And so inevitably her silhouette is pretty similar to the enemies that she is dressed like. She the actual like art style of it and the the colors and everything mark her out. She actually has her own theme that's really cool. But if you're sufficiently zoomed out, the silhouette is similar, and it when she bursts onto the scene, it's not immediately clear she's not an enemy. You have a little conversation, which the first way I wrote it, because she doesn't know you, and she's not being especially like friendly to you in her first opening statement. That also made her seem more like an enemy, so I've adjusted that a little bit, staying true to her personality, but making it a little bit more like something an ally might say to you. But ultimately, we just needed a text box to say, this person's on your side. And I struggled with it because I'm like, problem is, you don't know her. So it's not like, your people wouldn't realistically know that she's on your side. And that's not, I don't care about the realism part of it, but like, how do I phrase this text box? How do I say, like, her name is Dol Sabin, she's the Rebel Riot Priest. Do I say this is Dol Sabin, the Rebel Riot Priest? Your characters might know of her because she's kind of a figurehead for the Resistance. Like, this is in a country that your team, no one on your team comes from, and they would have seen reports of these riots and uprisings on the news. She is one of the stock images they roll out a lot. There's a famous photo of the Resistance that she is the star of. So they kind of might know her, but then trying to explain, like, that's not actually a help, because then if I say, oh, this is the Rebel Riot Priest that you know of, and like, do I need to explain how you know of her? And do you leave it ambiguous? It's like, oh, this person seems to be potentially on your side. It was so fucking awkward. And then I sort of like came at it from a completely different angle of like, maybe the text box should say new squad member, that doesn't solve the problem at all. It completely sidesteps the problem. Like, the problem is, how would you know? Do I tell you who she is? If I do, am I saying that your characters know who she is? And if not, how do I make that clear? And then I thought, this is a fucking video game. It is pretty common in video games that you just gain a member in your squad, or you get some new ability or something. If I just talk in video game terms, that's the information I'm actually trying to get across, is like, this person that just rocked up is not an enemy, they're on your team. They essentially will be part of your squad from now on. In a movie or a book or something, it would be crazy to have someone show up and then say, and a new member of their squad showed up on the team, because we don't know that yet. We haven't had a conversation about it. There's no, and them joining us is very far from your mind at that point. But yeah, sometimes you just got to realize this is a video game. I can just say new squad member. Do I say unlocked? I think I just say new squad member. And then I explain, this is Dol Sabin, here's her abilities. It's just the game, talking to the player. Forget about the characters. There is no like narrative problem here. We can just tell you what functionally this new element on the gameplay field is. And once I put it in there, I'm like, no, this is fine. This does not break immersion. It doesn't. There's no expectation for this tutorial box to be like in fiction. It's so easy to get like trapped in little rabbit holes and give yourself problems that don't really exist. And it's good to be able to just step back every now and then and like think of this from a completely different context. Think of it just, in this case, just from a video game point of view. And yeah, reframing it in a way that dodges the problem in the first place.